This is Dan Schneider. On this Dan Schneider video interview, the subject is music reaction videos. Ed Caggiani is my guest. He hosts Unhinged Music Reactions. It's a YouTube channel that watches music videos and gives critique upon them and also just opinions. And we'll be talking about that when we return. Ed Caggiani hosts Unhinged Music Reactions. It's a YouTube channel that features reactions to popular music. Ed, welcome. And before we get into the socio-political ramifications of doing such a thing, let me just ask a little bit about yourself. From what I do know from your channel, you are a musician. So who are you?
So as you said, my name is Ed Caggiani, and with my friend Doug, who lives in Canada, I'm in Colorado, we have a music reaction channel called Unhinged Music Reactions. Now, Doug and I are old college buddies. We both went to Syracuse University, class of '92, woohoo. And that's where we met, and we're both musicians. Actually, that's how we met. I was getting off an elevator at one of the dorms, and he was coming on, and he was carrying a guitar. So we struck up a conversation since I also play guitar. And then we hit it off, and then I joined his band. He had a band in college. He's a year older than I am. And so then we just became bandmates, started playing a lot of music together. After graduation, we kind of, we all went to different locations. He lived in Florida. I lived in Florida at the time as well. Then I moved to California for a while. He's now in Toronto, and I'm now in Colorado. But we decided to keep doing some sort of musical projects together. And it was a challenge because of, the long distance. But as the technology improved over the years, we were able to actually connect through technologies like Skype and Zoom and things like that, and actually play some music. So we originally had what was called Unhinged Podcast, which was our first project, which was basically a podcast on mental health. My friend Doug has mental illness, depression, and some other things going on, and we were trying to help him basically work through his problems. And the way we decided to do that was to talk about it. And what better way to talk about it is to talk about it openly with an audience and maybe potentially help other people. So we started the podcast mostly for him to try to improve his mental outlook, not be as depressed, kind of, impart his wisdom over the years of growing up with this disease. We ended up doing over 2 years, a 2-year span. We did about 60 episodes, audio only podcast. And then we decided at that point it was a little too much for him to have to keep reliving all the negative in his life and everything. So we decided to take a break from the mental health podcast and just play music, just do music therapy. That's always been a big topic for us, is music therapy, both being musicians. So instead of having the podcast, we decided, hey, let's try something new. Let's focus on music and see how that helps you out. And at the time, I was starting to browse a lot of YouTube videos, just generically, anything I could find through the suggestions. And I came across a series of videos that were reaction channels to music. And I thought it was incredible because suddenly I'm seeing young kids reacting to music that I grew up with, and seeing the spark in their eyes when they realize, oh my God, this is an amazing thing. I love this song. And it got me excited because I was like, wow, I get to kind of relive the introduction to music through someone else's eyes. And then I started thinking about it, and I realized that in college, Doug would love to introduce new music to me. He'd be like, "Hey, come over, you got to hear this," and he would play a song as he'd watch me. And basically, that was kind of like a reaction channel for him. And so I said to him, check out these videos. Let's see if this is something we can do. And that way we can, continue doing some sort of project and at the same time use it as music therapy. So it was interesting because it was challenging, since most of the reaction channels that we were seeing were younger people reacting to classic rock, to music we know and love, to, blues and things like that. We couldn't do that because we know all that music. So we had to try to think of how do we make it unique? So we figured, well, hey, we're two old guys, 50, 51, and let's try to listen to some really deep cut stuff we haven't heard before, unique things like mashups, covers from amazing cover bands that are on YouTube. Basically, we wanted to scour YouTube, find really interesting music, worldwide music, bands from Japan and things like that, we've never heard of, but could spark, an interest or give us some new creative ideas. And as we started doing that, we started discovering that there's just so much great music out there. On YouTube specifically, just watching all these bands from all over the world play music that, frankly, we thought, hey, music stopped being quote unquote good in the 90s or something. And then now we're discovering, no, music is alive and well. It's just, you just got to look for it. There's a lot out there.
Yeah, before we talk a bit more about what you're doing, I just wanted to ask, are both you and Doug just sort of garage rats, or are you classically trained in any way,
Mostly garage rats. I mean, we both learned guitar kind of on our own. We took lessons and stuff as kids, but nothing too formal. And then for me, it just became listening to a bunch of classic rock, learning the parts, and just being really, really passionate about music and guitar in particular. So yeah, no classical training per se, but yeah, we love to in college and even now we get together to just jam, just play and improvise and things like that.
Well, I found you guys. You guys were the first reaction people that I encountered when I, about 6-7 months ago, one of the people from my website, a writer, had said, "Hey Dan, check out this band Greta Van Fleet." And so I listened to them, and I was like, "Oh wow, that's interesting." And I listened to maybe the 7 or 8 of their tunes, and I was like, "Yeah, they do sound a bit like Led Zeppelin," but I've always found that a lazy comparison, because I was like, I actually think the singer has about 50% Plant, 50% Ronnie Dio in him. The lead singer. He's got that kind of, and he's a small little guy too, sort of like Dio was. So then I started, clicking on the links of other ones, because if you're listening to Greta Van Fleet, then there's another link to Greta Van Fleet, sure. And then this and that. And you had mentioned that you had started listening to these music reaction videos. When did they actually start then? How long have you guys been doing it?
I don't know when music reaction channels started on YouTube, way before us.
Yeah.
We only started doing this towards the end of last year, in 2019, probably around October, November, that sort of time frame. So we're fairly new on the scene, but I think our approach is a little bit unique. Since most of like I said before, most of the reaction channels we've seen have been a lot of young kids reacting to older music. So, I mean, we've grown, we're not huge, 5,000-ish subscribers right now, and growing. But we basically every Sunday we get together, record a few episodes, and then I'll edit them throughout the week and then put them out. Right now we're averaging about one a week. But yeah, when I discovered music reaction videos, it's kind of a black hole in YouTube. You can go for hours and hours and days just exploring all the different channels that are out there and all the videos that people put out.
Yeah, I know
it's quite amazing.
You guys also have done some mashups too, which I knew about a decade or so ago, seeing musical mashups. But what I really found interesting was I started listening to the music videos, and I'll talk about some other people that I've seen and contrast them to your style. But what was interesting, I saw comedy reaction videos, people watching classic George Carlin or Richard Pryor stuff, Bill Burr, more modern. And people reacting to that, and I just found it quite interesting. But I haven't found as much classical music because I grew up in the '70s listening to Led Zeppelin, hard rock, heavy metal, Motown too, and it's only in the last few years that I got a bit more into classical music. My wife has much broader musical taste than I do, but I haven't found the same amount of, other than you see a 7-year-old reacts to Bach's concerto in B minor or something,
right.
But there isn't that. What do you think it is about classic rock? Because what I found is it's either 90% of the videos seem to be black people listening to classic rock or young kids listening to old classic rock too. So it's, what do you think propels that dynamic, do you think?
Well, part of it, I think, is that music from the 60s and 70s, pretty much ushered in this whole era of rock and roll and got kids really passionate about music. And I think the idea is that now all the people who grew up in the 60s and 70s are now, our age, and they're watching these videos of younger kids discovering what they had discovered 30 years ago, and that's exciting to, like I said before, to actually see someone's eyes light up about a song that you hold dear, and that's a great thing. I think it has to do with being able to relate to the music in some way. A lot of the classic rock 60s, 70s stuff has a little bit of an edge as far as a little rebellious edge, and teenagers kind of relate to that. As far as something like classical music and reacting to that, I think that's a tougher call. I think that's it's harder for people to relate to classical music unless they are formally trained musicians, or have gone to classes for it, and or grew up in a family that's into classical music. It's just not something you hear all the time, and it's not something that you just latch onto and can relate to on a day-to-day basis. At least that's been my experience. And I do think that the classic rock really has it's got this power behind it. The first time that music really became free and people would improvise and come up with all these really unique and psychedelic sounds and things like that, I think that's something that a lot of people can just kind of get into and relate to.
Yeah, the one video that seems to be the most popularly reacted to is a video from a live TV show from the '60s with Bobby Hatfield from the Righteous Brothers singing Unchained Melody. If you Google that, I mean, literally, you'll get 50 pages of reaction videos. There's one that has been out for like 4 months. A girl who calls herself Two Sushi, and she's almost having an orgasm listening to this. She's a black girl who's probably 25, 30, listening to this white guy from 50 years ago just hitting these insanely high notes live on TV, and she's just like blown away.
That's something that we always talk about, is what tends to be more popular is really high contrast things like, this is why mashups, I think, are very popular, because you're taking a band, kind of a heavy band like Danzig, and mashing it up with the Temptations. You don't think of those two bands in the same breath, but then you put them together and it's like, wow, that really works. It's quite amazing. So that contrast it really pulls people in.
Well, you even did some contrast videos or mashup videos. There's one you have. What was it? Puddles the Clown doing what is it? The Gilligan's Island and Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, yeah. It was Stairway to Gilligan's Island.
Yeah, yeah.
Beautiful. I mean, I'm a fan of Puddles Pity Party. That's the name of the act. He's an amazing singer who dresses like a clown. First time I saw him was on America's Got Talent.
Okay.
And so then I looked him up, and he's got quite an extensive YouTube career. And then I started seeing that he was doing mashups. He was doing, well, first of all, he does a lot of covers, but then he would do some mashups that just, the contrast between a TV theme song like Gilligan's Island, a classic rock song by Led Zeppelin, Stairway to Heaven, and a middle-aged clown singing that. It's just like three things from three different worlds coming together and making something beautiful. And I have to say that I love that video.
Let me just talk a little bit about the way that you and Doug approach stuff, because you are musicians. Most reaction videos, from what I can tell, are not musicians. There's one that's a young girl who's doing some soul music, but she's about the only other musician I can think of. But you and Doug both, you'll talk, well, he slipped into chord B or something, and so you explain them a little bit more than just people having an emotional reaction. Some of the emotional reactions are really interesting to see, but I think one of the things that separates you guys is because you have played guitar and you know a bit more about, music, there's a bit more explanatory stuff. Is that something you strive for, or do you just go with emotion, and if the explanation is needed, do you then go to it?
We do try to bring a little element of the musicality of the video. Now, the thing is, we don't want to get too deep into that. We don't want to dissect every song and explain the chord progression and explain what mode they could solo in or anything like that. We'll touch on those for those in our viewer audience who appreciate it, but we won't get too deep into it, because then I think if we got too technical and too deep into it, I think some people will get turned off, and they do prefer the emotional side of it. So we kind of try to give a little bit of both.
And what would you describe, are you the Oscar to his Felix, or, what is the contrast between the way you both approach a song?
So that's interesting, because it's hard to say who's the Oscar and who's the Felix, but essentially I'm the guy who actually is more into experiencing brand new music made today that is really good, whereas Doug is definitely more of the I like the classic stuff. I like the classic bands. It's going to be really hard for a new band to live up to that. So there's a little bit of a clash there, where I will sometimes find a brand new band or a band that's, that got together in the 2000s, and I'll play a song for him and say, this is just as good as, a Journey song or a Boston song or Led Zeppelin. And it's really hard for him to sometimes break through that barrier and agree. He's definitely, since we started this channel, he's definitely opened his mind up tremendously, because we have discovered a lot of new, amazing music. But he's definitely a little bit more on the cynical side, on the skeptical side, and I'm definitely more the optimist, and thinking that there's always good music. You just have to find it.
So do you both select stuff that you find, or it sounds like you're the person who finds most of it, and does he get the veto power if he says, no, I don't want to do that?
It goes both ways.
Yeah.
He has presented plenty of songs on our channel, and I've presented a lot as well. We kind of both have veto power if we really don't feel like, we don't listen to the songs beforehand. I mean, I'll listen to a song that I want to present to him, and he'll listen to a song he wants to present to me. But if he tells me about it, I'm not going to go ahead and listen before the show, because we want the reactions to be genuine. The best ones, though, are the ones from our viewers who send us requests for things to react to. And normally, when we get requests, we'll generally kind of look at it and try to figure out, well, is this going to fit our channel? Is this something that we both think will give a decent reaction one way or the other? But we still won't listen to the song. And then, we've been very pleasantly surprised with some of the suggestions. There's a band called Foxes and Fossils out of Georgia. They are essentially what amounts to a bar band that has a huge YouTube presence because they do covers of tons of classic rock songs and even newer songs. And they are immaculate. They sound beautiful. And they're called Foxes and Fossils because it's a bunch of older, middle-aged men with their daughters singing. Oh. So it's a nice combination, and the voices are amazing, and the instruments are played impeccably. So that's something that we discovered just from requests. So we do look at a bunch of requests that come in from our viewers, and usually those are the ones that give us the biggest surprises.
Well, Ed, you had mentioned that you get a lot of requests, and you had said, "Is it right for your channel?" When you say that, do you mean that if I requested, say, a deep Otis Redding cut, you wouldn't listen to it because it's not classic rock, or what?
Not necessarily. That might be one that we would consider for sure. We do like a lot of soul and that type, soul and jazz and things like that. I think the ones that we tend to not react to are things that we know inherently we're not into. Rap and hip hop; those are genres that I really have. I don't want to sound bad here, but I have no. I don't like rap or hip hop or club music or house music, electronica, that sort of thing. Just never hits me. So we tend to shy away from those because, no one wants to see bad reactions where we hate music or something. And hate's a strong word, but so we tend to stick to genres generally that we know we're gonna find stuff we like.
Well, that's interesting because I know as a writer and an artist myself, one of the things that I think is useful about criticism is to point out what's good and what's bad and why. But the reaction videos aren't really criticism, though. So that's
right.
that's a difference. But so what percentage, though, would you say of songs have you and Doug had, say, negative reactions on, and who tends to be less enthused about what they hear new, you or him?
Well, definitely Doug has been more on the didn't like it side, and I tend to be more of the, like I said, the optimist and kind of like more things. But generally, I would say the vast majority of our reactions have been overwhelmingly positive, and we do have some conflict in some of our videos where I'll be super jazzed about a song and be like, oh my God, this is now my new favorite band. Yeah. And Doug will be more like, it was a good song, but I probably wouldn't listen to more. So that kind of thing. But generally, I think we both actually discovered a lot of new music that we are liking now.
And is it usually something technical that turns you off in a song, or is it just that gut feeling?
It's mostly that gut feeling. Sometimes there might be some technical musical thing, like the production quality or the way something has been recorded. Specifically, like we listened to one band that was recording live, and it was the School of Rock. They did a King Crimson song, and we reacted to it. It was amazing. These kids playing this, King Crimson music, but the drums were recorded in a weird way, so they didn't really sound good in the mix. So that was a little bit of a turnoff. Doug pointed that out in our video. But generally, we were still like, it blew us away. So yeah, mostly it's a gut reaction, and it's really how it makes us feel emotionally.
And let's talk about what song reactions have you feel were the best ones, and are the best reactions usually to the best songs or to songs that you're maybe a little leery of initially?
I think the best ones, I think a lot of our best reactions are really the ones where there's a conflict between me and Doug, because we'll get into it in the video and we will actually argue certain points. Always tongue in cheek, always jokingly. Puddle's Pity Party, for example. We've done a couple of his videos, and Doug was not a fan of the first one we did at all, and I was a huge fan of it. So we got into it a little bit there, which is why it was interesting to revisit Puddles with the Gilligan's Island mashup, which he actually loved, which I was surprised about because he really did not like the original song we did. Other ones that I think we both end up really liking a lot are the ones that totally surprise us. There's a Japanese all-female heavy metal band called Bandmade that just blew us away. Their music is very well written, and they're all really good on their instruments, and they sound amazing. So we were both very impressed with that. I now have one of my new favorite bands is one that we discovered on the channel called the Church of the Cosmic Skull. They're a band out of England that is, to me, just, I mean, they sound very progressive, kind of classic rock, progressive 70s type, with more of almost a choir sound, and it's just amazing. I listen to them every day now. And that's one of the ones where I had, one of my best reactions, I feel. So yeah, it tends to be the ones where they surprise us a lot with, we're not expecting this from this band, and suddenly we're like blown away. Or the ones, I always like the ones where we kind of have a conflict. It just makes it a little more fun and interesting.
So let's talk about some of the fans' reactions to your reactions. Are the things that the fans enjoy the most and get you the most views the things that the reactions that you think are the best, or have you had ones that it didn't move me either way, and then it's the third most popular video and you're like, why the hell?
Yeah, no, we're always surprised, right? No, it tends not to be that way, where the ones that get the most views on our channel are not necessarily the ones that we enjoyed the most. Mm-hmm. By far, I would say that Foxes and Fossils probably has the most views on our channel. They have a huge fan base, and they are great musicians. But when it all boils down to it, it's a cover band, so it's not one of the ones that I'm going to keep revisiting over and over again. But hugely popular on our channel. Colt Clark and the Quarantine Kids. I don't know if you've heard of them, but they've been a viral sensation on YouTube. It's a family in quarantine where they play music covers, but the kids are like really young and very cute. They're playing their instruments and they sound great. Huge on our channel. But again, it's not, I would say it wasn't one of my favorite reactions. It's certainly cute and it's amazing to watch them, but I've been more touched by some of the other music on our channel that may not be that popular, but from our viewers. So it really kind of varies.
Well, I want to talk a few more things about reaction videos and your channel and the YouTube stuff, and then we can end the show with it. I want to do a segment where I sort of pluck your brain about music and popular music, since you're a musician. So let me just ask them, what is the end game? Do you guys hope to one day get popular enough that you can monetize the channel? Because as far as I could tell, I don't think I recall seeing any commercials on your videos.
No, we are
Oh,
monetized,
you are?
actually. Yes. We recently reached the threshold where we could monetize.
Oh, okay.
So we are monetizing. However, that's never been the intention of the channel. It's nice, especially for Doug. He lives on disability in Toronto, so he can't work. So anything extra is great for him. So for him, it might mean more to monetize the channel. But we always went into this as this is two things. It's a fun activity that me and my best friend can do together. And two, it's music therapy for him. It's discussing what his biggest passion is, and that is music. So that's kind of like, we had our mental health podcast in the past, and that ran its course. And now we're doing this to kind of, keep his mind occupied with music. So that's really the intention of our channel is, help him and indulge our passion in music, and to just have a fun time with friends.
And do you ever envision yourself, maybe if you do get popular enough with this channel, maybe doing a second channel where maybe you're doing reactions to, I don't know, soul music or Motown or classical even?
If we were to do another channel, I don't think it would be a reaction channel. It might be something more guitar oriented. I've built a couple guitars, so I have some videos of me working on guitars. I could do that. I think if we were to do another reaction channel, it would be more of maybe a sub part of our current channel, and maybe create a playlist for jazz music and a playlist for classic rock, a playlist for new, different things like that. Right now, everything that we do is under one reaction playlist on our channel.
Yeah, just yesterday I was listening to a young British pianist who has I can't remember the fellow's name. He's probably 20, 25 years old. And he has a series of videos where he exposes the plagiarism of rock musicians who steal chords and steal musical passages from,
Right.
well, you would probably remember the name Eric Carmen, for example, notably ripped off a couple of Rachmaninoff pieces, and he just dissects it.
Well, the bottom line is, music it's kind of this mathematical thing, right? And there are things that, at least, we know in Western music that certain chord progressions sound good. And so, yeah, there's going to be a lot of that. Hey, this song sounds suspiciously a lot like that song. But, there's only so much you can do.
Well, let me just end the segment here on the reaction stuff before we get into just more music, and ask you to name maybe 3 or 4 of your favorite reaction channels or reactors and why they are. I can give you a couple of examples. There's one group. There's of twins in the UK, and they must be Maori, or maybe they look either Maori or from Australia, the Aboriginal or something. And it's so funny because they're so enthused. They actually also have a reaction to the Bobby Hatfield Righteous Brothers thing I mentioned earlier, and they're like, "Oh, bloody hell, man, this guy can do it. Oh my God." And yeah. And then there are a few people who are real funny. But and then there's 2 young college age kids who are sort of like you guys, 30 years young. I forget their names.
Andy and Alex.
Andy and Alex, yeah. And they're like, and they're sort of like the Bill and Ted of reaction videos.
That's so funny you say that, because Andy and Alex were one of the first reaction channels that we started watching.
Oh, yeah.
And Doug always pointed out, "Oh my God, I'm Andy, you're Alex," but 30 years ago. And it's kind of true, like they're 2 college buddies doing this, 2 musicians too. So yeah, they're one of our favorites. We watch them all the time. Another one that's phenomenal is a single guy called Jamel, aka Jamal.
Yeah. I tried to get him. But I couldn't find any way to contact him. But
yeah, no, he's He's amazing.
Yeah.
He has really good reactions,
Yeah.
and a lot of times it's just hilarious to watch him react. He'll pause the music, look right into the camera, and say something crazy. Um, it's a little different than having two people like us, you know, because we can bounce things off each other. He carries the whole show, and he's got a great personality. One other one of our favorites is father and son reactions. It's essentially a father and a son, a young kid, teenager, and it's the father introducing his son to all sorts of classic rock. And we love that because, you know, obviously we can relate to that. And it's very touching to see the kid just lighting up, experiencing this new music for the first time, and the father feeling all proud that his kid is getting into it, almost with a tear in his eye. It's a great channel.
Yeah, that reminded me. There's a husband and wife reaction channel. Well, a couple of them, but my favorite one is I think they were a black couple in Florida, and he usually listens first and then has wife's reaction to, you know. But
Yes.
but one question did come to me as you were talking though, and that is, what bands or musicians do you think make for the best reaction videos? Is there a type of band or a type of music that lends itself more to good reactions?
I think, well, for one thing, I think good music is good music, and if it's something that's recorded really well and can get its point across emotionally, I think people just have a good reaction, regardless of genre. I think things that are not too heavy, you know, when you go to extremes, it tends to turn off people, you know, more people than if you kind of stick to something that's a little more, I hesitate to use the word mainstream, but nothing like, you know, you're not going to get that many users if you play a lot of thrash music, you know, really heavy, dark metal, death metal, that sort of thing. You know, it has an audience, and I like some of that stuff, but generally it's not going to provide the best reactions, I think.
Although there is a channel, Lost in Vegas, two black fellas who are a little younger than you guys. They seem to do a hell of a lot of heavy metal.
Yeah. Well, and you find your audience, right? Like if that's what they're into, then they can speak to that audience. We tend to be a little, I mean, we like metal, absolutely. And, you know, Bandmade is a metal band. Another Japanese band that's a metal band that we absolutely love, Ningen Isu. They blew us away. They're actually middle-aged Japanese guys playing like Black Sabbath type music, and that has been very popular on our channel and among lots of reaction channels. So again, I think it comes down to what works best is contrast. People love to see, you know, a 60-year-old Japanese guy playing, you know, shredding on guitar. That's just cool.
So Ed, in this final segment, I want to just ask you a few questions as a layman who grew up with classic rock, and over the last 50 plus years, I'm 55, have seen the way music has gone. I had a music teacher when I was in elementary school, Mr. Freudenberg, and this was in the early 70s. And I remember him telling us, as in music class, we learned to play little instruments. I sucked at all of it, but he said, you know, rock and roll is passing. He said, but classical music will stand the test of time. And it wasn't until a few years ago I think I understood what he meant. And it's like you said, there are good bands, but I want to talk about corporations that keep good music down. But when I listened recently, I started writing plays a few years ago, and I wanted to use little bits of music that was in public domain, and so I turned to classical music to use a bit of it. And when I listened to like Beethoven, I was like, this guy is a fucking ass kicker. I mean, Beethoven. I mean, this guy. I mean, he'd be, you know. I don't even know if there's a comparison in rock, but he'd be maybe Jimmy Page or something in rock and whatnot. And yet, when you listen to radio, you hear all this droning stuff. You know, and they're easy to slag on bands like a Nickelback or something that seem to be third or fourth rate iterations of the Black Sabbaths and the Deep
Yeah.
Purples and the Led Zeppelins. Is it really that that corporations just keep the good stuff down and they just want it's like they want to feed chum to the people?
Yeah, the way I look at it, I feel like typically if you're going out to make music just to make money, that's when you get music that's just kind of meh.
Yeah.
If you're passionate about it and you're making music just to make music because you're an artist and you really love your music, that tends to become much more inspirational to people. I think the music industry is changing a lot now with the internet and things like YouTube, and Apple Music and Spotify and all those streaming services. Um, it allows you to get the music instantly, and I feel like just the times change. So yeah, I think that corporations, the music industry, big record companies, they don't tend to have the passion for the specific kind of music. They have the passion for making money from it.
Yeah.
So that big soulless evil corporation. Yeah, kind of. Their goals are different. That's all. I think independent music tends to take more risks, and that's why it becomes more, inspiring.
Yeah.
Personally,
I know someone like Ani DeFranco, whether you like her music or not, is certainly more noteworthy as an artist than, let's use the obvious choice, someone like Britney Spears.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Now, one of the things, other than reaction videos, I found a lot of videos where you have people who can do multiple voices and they imitate artists. And one of the things that I've noticed is they really rip on this thing called auto-tune, which, it's like having a nasal projection through an air conditioner.
Yeah.
I have the ability, but the kind of sound I mean.
Yes.
So you end up with all of this sort of electronica voice stuff, and it, Britney Spears sounds like this one, sounds like that one, sounds like the other one. And, you had that brief flowering in the late 90s where you had the Alanis Morissettes and the Sheryl Crows and the Jules and a handful of others, Sarah McLachlan, and that were trying to move it forward. But then came the boy bands of the 90s, and ever since it seems that it's all this electronic auto-tune. Is there a way out of that? And what is basically radio a dead end for a real musical artist now?
That's hard to say. As far as the auto-tune thing is concerned, to me, it was a tool that just got out of hand. Essentially, I see no problem with using auto-tune if you're recording an album and you record the perfect track, except, I missed that one note there. With auto-tune, you can fix that and not have to re-record the whole track. I have no problem with that whatsoever. The difference is now people are using the auto-tune fully turned up where it sounds very robotic for an entire song. And the first time I heard it, I was like, hey, that's kind of neat. But then I heard it over and over and over again, and it sounded pretty much like all new music was being sung by robots.
Yeah.
So yeah, it got overused, overplayed, and kind of lost its magic. As far as a tool for recording artists, I see no problem with trying to make sure that your song doesn't sound off key. And yeah, you could always re-record a track, but if you get the whole track perfect and you just miss one little note, just nudge it up a little. That's cool.
Yeah.
What was the other part of your question? I'm sorry.
I forgot, but I mentioned Jimmy Page earlier, and one of the things that Page and Led Zeppelin, but mostly Page, is infamous for is having ripped off old chords and progressions from blues musicians for the 30s and 40s and not crediting them until forced to by lawsuits. And I'm just wondering if the fact that a lot of classic rock was influenced by the blues has given rise to the cliche that I find that rock and roll is sort of simply the extension of gospel and blues and jazz into rock and roll, and it's a totally black phenomenon that whites latch onto. Because as someone who's a poet himself, I'm like, well, the beat may be African, but the form of the songs written goes back to the troubadours, goes back to the English ballads. So it's a mixture, a blend of the European and African influences. But I just wonder sometimes when I've seen many channels where musicians have spoken about it as if rock and roll is simply another thing that white people took away from black people. And I'm like, well, no, it isn't. It's actually a good thing in the sense that you get in the blend of these two cultures. What Jimmy Page did isn't good when he doesn't credit those people, but overall the mixture is good. What is your take on that?
Oh no, I totally agree. I think a mix of cultures is essential for lots of things, but musically, you know, you don't want to be stuck in one cultural bucket for music because it gets boring. You want the influence of the world around you. This is why we're discovering all these Japanese, Filipino bands, all these other world bands that have amazing musical styles that we were just never exposed to before. And that just gives us more ideas, more creativity, more inspiration to do something similar. And I don't consider that ripping off at all. I consider it a melding of cultures and a sharing of ideas, creative ideas. Yes, I think you know, you have to give credit where credit is due, especially if you're specifically ripping off very specific chord progressions and things like that. But no, I think it's all about sharing and listening to as much different kind of music as you can from all over the world, from different types. Now, you know, like I said before, I'm not into hip hop, I'm not into rap, and you know, it's I never grew up with that. There are, you know, maybe a handful of rap or hip hop songs that I can listen to and be like, oh yeah, that's kind of neat, and hear some influences from other genres. But you know, we all have our favorite genres, and some of them might be more influenced by different cultures than others, and you know, we might relate to one more than the other. But yeah, no, I think it should be a free for all. We really need to experience other cultures in every way.
Yeah, I had mentioned earlier that I had been writing plays and trying to use some public domain music, which is what got me into some classical stuff. But I also have used some modern stuff that I found, and I use an alternate version so that you can either use the public domain stuff, or once it falls into the play falls into public domain, or the rock song, you can use that too. And I found, you mentioned deep cuts. Probably one of the most famous guitar riffs, or the famous riffs of all, is, you know, Iron Butterflies, Inagata Devita. Bum, bum, ba-da-da-dum, bum, ba-da-da-da-dum, bum. Yeah. But if you listen to them, they did more than that. And I really find it odd, because I guess maybe they'd be considered a one-hit wonder. But they have a really wide, well, a really odd but wide range of songs they did. Some of it is more hippie-like, others of it is very psychological and whatnot. People mention like Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention, but I think Iron Butterfly was right there. Can you name 2 or 3 bands, say, from the classic rock era, the 60s, 70s, that really went underrated? And 13th Floor Elevators, that's another band that comes to mind. What are the 2 or 3 bands that you can think of from when you were growing up that you go back to and say, you know, I never went past their 1 or 2 top hits, but man, they have stuff.
Yeah. Oh, who's that band? Oh, geez. You might have to pause here. What's that song? It's a classic rock band. Hang on. Oh, Grand Funk Railroad.
Oh, yeah.
Grand Funk Railroad. Yeah. That's a band that I only knew one or two songs from growing up. The more I listen to them now, the more I just love them. Rare Earth is another one.
Yeah.
Rare Earth has that song, I Just Want to Celebrate. And that, I love that song. And I've listened to it from, since I was a teenager. But the more I explore Rare Earth now, the more I'm realizing, oh, wow, they were really good. They had a lot of good stuff. So yeah, Grand Funk and Rare Earth are two bands definitely that have deep cuts that I never really knew before, and that really, frankly, weren't that popular. They were known just for one or two songs.
Well, Mark Farner was the lead guitarist of Grand Funk, and I think he was very underrated. I think Grand Funk, after the Doors and after maybe the Jefferson Airplane, they were probably, I think, the best American band of that era.
Yeah. I'm discovering that now. Back then, growing up, I was really into, the Led Zeppelins, the Who, my all-time favorite band, the Who, the Beatles, the Stones, the Kinks, the typical classic rock bands that everyone knows. And then what we consider the one-hit wonders like Rare Earth. Now I'm discovering they're a lot deeper than what I thought.
So let me ask you a question about what your first concert was. I'll tell you what my first concert was. My first concert was, I went to see Motorhead. This was on Long Island in like '78. And the opening band was one of the all-time worst bands. If you ever get a chance to look them up and do a reaction video, it's funny. It's The Gods, Godz, The Gods. Gotta keep it running. It's one of the most. It's Spinal Tap level bad they were, and they were terrible in person. But it's just a hilariously overbloated song that's poorly sung. And then my second concert was at the Fell Forum. I wanted to impress this girl who wanted to see Barry Manilow. I can't remember her name. I don't remember any, except that Barry was pretty damn good. He was better than the Gods. But what was your first concert that you remember?
So my first concert was actually a solo concert of Roger Daltrey. And this was, I was probably 14, 15, something like that. And like I said before, my favorite band of all time is The Who.
Yeah.
And that's when I was getting into The Who, right around, between 12 and 15. I was really, really into them. And so when I saw that he was coming to town on a solo tour, I said, all right, I have to go. And it was my first concert. My parents had to drive me. I went with a friend of mine, and they dropped us off and then just waited in the car until the concert was over. It was quite an experience. It was the first time going to a concert, and this was when I lived in New Hampshire. So it was a place called the Tower Theater, and it was an amazing experience. Just because it was my first concert. I've since seen The Who live after that, but that'll still always be in my memory as a special concert, having been my first, and it was someone I really wanted to see.
Did you ever go to a concert like I did with Barry Manilow that you never thought you'd go to?
I have, and didn't enjoy it. I went to a Matchbox 20 concert. Not a fan. I went because a friend of mine wanted to go, my wife wanted to go, and I never liked them. And then we went to the concert, and I was trying to be open-minded, and I did not like it at all.
Yeah. I have to say, I enjoyed the concerts that I didn't expect to. For example, some years ago, back about 10, 12 years ago, there was a Christmas special by Celtic Woman. These gals from Ireland who sing this song. And so they came here to the Austin area where I lived some years ago, and we went to see them, and I was like, damn, they were smart. Not only that, but they were hot chicks too. And they could sing their asses off. So let me just ask, in wrapping up, you had mentioned a little bit about possible things you might do. Where do you envision the channel in 1, 2, 3, 5 years?
That's hard to say. I mean, we definitely want to keep going and discover more things. we just, like I said before, we just recently started getting into mashups and covers and stuff like that. We might kind of, it seems like the way the channel is moving, it's more about discovering really interesting stuff on YouTube. So who knows? I mean, maybe we'll do reactions, like you were saying, to comedy. Maybe we'll do reactions to movies. Who knows? But as far as music is concerned, we're going to try to delve into more unknowns, more genres we might not have heard of. You know, we did a reaction to a band called the Who Band, which is a Mongolian throat singing band, and they blew us away. I mean, they're like almost hard rock throat singing. It's just incredible. The more we find things like that, the more passionate we get about doing the channel, because it's fun to discover all this new stuff. And I think, you know, YouTube is amazing. There's so many videos, so many rabbit holes you can go down into. And we like to showcase and highlight potentially unknown bands or ones that don't have a big following. And we want to, you know, give them some airtime and say, these guys are amazing, check them out. And also young kids playing amazing music. Like we said, we did the School of Rock kids playing King Crimson, which is very challenging. So we love seeing that.
21st Century Schizoid Man just came to me.
Yeah, one of the best.
Well, if you ever do comedy reactions, I'll tell you, you got to watch some of the classic routines from George Carlin in the last 10, 12 years of his life, because there are some of the things where he's describing 2020, including COVID-19 to a T.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the guy was not only a great comic, but he had a touch of the prophet in him. But I will link to Unhinged Music Reactions below this video. I want to thank you for spending an hour or so speaking with me. And if I could make a suggestion, and I think I sent an email to you guys a month or so ago when I first contacted you, there's a 21st century, I call them heart, not wannabe, but a group that reminds me of heart, called Larkin Poe. Two sisters who do what they call roots rock. So if you ever get a chance to listen to them, Larkin, Larkin, Poe, like an Edgar Allan.
Search our channel. I think we have one on there.
Oh, you did recently? Okay.
We did a Larkin Poe actually a while back.
Oh, okay.
I've listened to more of their stuff since, and they are amazing.
Yeah, and
we should probably revisit them on the channel too.
Yeah. Okay. Well, again, thanks, Ed, for spending an hour speaking with me, and good luck in the future.
It's my pleasure. Okay. Take care.